Finish this out. Last video notes of the pre-Columbian and colonization notes. So last thing we're going to really do is we're going to talk about a religious movement, the Great Awakening. And I did put this slide in the notes. I know it kind of seems just like a little bit of a an introductory slide, but I went in and I put it in there because I want you to understand what the Great Awakening was. Now, pause this, get it down, then listen to me. All right, so the Great Awakening, I just want you to think about that for a second. The Great Awakening, to awaken, to wake up, yes? And when you think of the Great Awakening, you think people are waking up to a new idea. Sometimes, I think of new ideas, new times in your life, a new chance. The Great Awakening, by definition, is a wave of religious revivals that spread across the American colonies. Here's the dates you need to remember. During the 1730s and the 1740s. That is going to be when it starts, okay? The Great Awakening is going to look something like this. Now, you do not have this slide in your notes, but I want you to kind of visualize this. 1730s, 1740s, the entire nation goes through this shared national religious experience. And you might want to make sure you notate somewhere that it is a shared national religious experience. Right here, you're looking at a picture, oil painting, of something during the First Great Awakening. And I should mention this is the First Great Awakening. And if I say it's the first, then I guess you probably already know there's going to be a second. But we won't get to that until about 100 years later. But this is what it looks like. Religious revival. Now, these people look like it might be a little bit hot outside, a little toasty. But you have this gentleman right here, and his hand is in the air, and he is preaching. And they are here to hear him say what he is going to say. And this whole experience is going to give birth to quite a few things. Now, the reasons for the Great Awakening. Let me go ahead and let you pause this. This one is a little bit more detailed. Pause it. Get this one down. All right. Reasons for the Great Awakening. People felt that this old religion that came sometimes from England, was dry, dull, and very distant. A lot of the times, even though it had been reformed from England, they still felt that it was not, I don't want to say modern enough, but close enough to them, if you will. And if you haven't started to already tell, these American colonies, they like things that are their own. They like to be in control, self-government, Mayflower Compact, all of this stuff like that. So what happens is the Puritans in the North actually established something called the Halfway Covenant. Please star and circle that. The Puritans established an easing, circle that word, easing of the requirements for church membership, allowed the baptism of children of baptized but unconverted Puritans. So all you had to do to become part of the church was be baptized, which technically, if you think about 2015, if I wanted to become part of my church, all I really have to do is walk in, right? Baptism is now even just a choice. But this was an easing requirement. I didn't have to be documented. I didn't have to be converted. I didn't have to go to classes. I didn't have to do all this stuff. It literally just meant I could come, I could be baptized, and now I am part of this church, which means it's easier to be part of it. Easier to ease requirements, which means if it's easier to do it, more or less people are going to do it. More people are going to do it. It increases, highlight, number of religious people, but diversifies the sects of religion. And remember, S-E-C-T-S, sections. So we have an increase in religion. However, we have also an increase in different diversities of that religion. So you've got different church sections, different denominations. Have y'all ever heard that word? Say that, denominations. Preachers felt that people needed to be concerned with inner emotions as opposed to outward religious behavior. People in New England can read because of this, because you got to think about it. If all of these people are listening to a minister and he says, go home and read your Bible, well, guess what? You got to know how to read. Now, let me introduce you to some of the ministers. Pause this, get their names down, and then just listen to me. Okay, so two famous ministers of the Great Awakening. One is going to be a man named George Whitefield. Okay, he's a famous Puritan minister who used raw emotional sermons to reach all classes of colonists. He would go to these, have y'all ever seen like a tent revival? Not as often, in this day and age, but I remember when I was younger, about 15 years ago or so, when I was living in Abilene, Texas, Man, there would be these tent revivals, and like people would come from, towns away to hear this one minister come from, Dallas or something like that, who was very famous and was a very good preacher. And in these just amazing amounts of people would listen to this person. George Whitefield was one of the best preachers because of his use of emotion and how he knew how to present himself. Let me ask you something. This is just a personal question. Does it matter if somebody knows how to talk to you or present themselves, or if they're a good public speaker to you? Can you pay attention longer? Of course you can. If somebody doesn't know how to say something, or if somebody doesn't know how to connect with you or reach you, dude, I'm done in like 3 minutes, and then I'm like already on my phone. Horrible, I know, but I'm a human being just like you are. But George Whitefield, he knows how to get into people's heads. And he says that good works and godly lives can bring you salvation. Not money, not being the elite of the elite. He said we can be good people, live good lives, and then you can reach heaven. It's going to be something that eventually kind of catches on. And that experience, that, the Great Awakening will spread even more. Now, Jonathan Edwards, Puritan minister, I'm going to be very honest with you. This guy just scares crap out of people, okay? And fear motivates, unfortunately. I hate to say it, but it's true. He has a very famous sermon called Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God, in which, this might be a good quiz question for you. See if you listened to me and didn't just write somebody's notes down. He gives a sermon about, oh my gosh, I read this sermon. He said that every single person, and he says it like very dark and ominously, he says every single person in the world is simply just a spider that God holds over the flames of a fire. And if you make God mad, he will drop you in the fire. And all sinners are just hands in the hands of an angry God. And people get the crap scared out of them, so they decide to lead a good life. I mean, I don't know. If you're leading a good life, I guess it doesn't matter why you are, but I would think it was just probably a better idea just to do it because you think it's a good idea, rather than you're going to get dropped into fire by God. Outcomes of the Great Awakening. Pause this, get it down. Okay, deep religious convictions come throughout the colonies. The birth of these religious convictions because of the Great Awakening in the 1730s and 40s. New churches are going to be built. Because you have more members, you need more churches. Colleges are founded. Because here's the deal. Everybody's going to be religious. They need to be able to read the Bible and study the Bible. Then you've got all kinds of other things going on, like religious unity and a bonding experience and different sects of denominations popping up. So in all reality, the Great Awakening is going to affect more than you can possibly imagine. It is not political. It is entirely social. But you have to think about it. If I go through an experience with you, I am stronger with you. If I go to church, I have to be able to read the Bible, so now I'm educated, right? And I asked you before, who's easier to control, a stupid person or an educated person? A stupid person's always easier to control. An educated person says, why are you doing this? Why are you taxing me? Why don't I have representation? Why this? Why that? And that becomes a little bit of an independent spirit. The New Light colleges, and I've got this down at the bottom of your notes, the colleges I'm talking about them building, I think you may have heard of some of them. You might want to jot some of these down. Brown, Columbia, Princeton, Dartmouth. Yeah, pretty big Ivy League colleges. So when you start thinking about what did the Great Awakening start, it starts the Ivy League. The Ivy League is the pristine education system in the entire world. Religion gives birth to education. Pause it, get it down. All right, the Great Awakening leads to the Enlightenment. Now here's the deal. Above this slide, I want you to right now do a picture for me. It doesn't have to be like a crazy, intense picture, just a picture. Enlightenment. Why don't you draw a light bulb? Okay, now the big deal about the Great Awakening leading to the Enlightenment, okay? There are two people in particular I want to make sure you understand. Jean-Jacques Rousseau and John Locke that come out of this time period. I should say the study of them came out of this time period. And when this Great Awakening in education leads to this Enlightenment, there is going to be a surge of literacy. I would circle that. There's going to be lots of newspapers and book publications because people want to know more and read more. Schools are going to be synonymous with new towns and villages. And there is going to be a new thing popping up. Well, not a new thing, but it's a new thing in the colonies. Deism. The belief that God created the universe and that universe is governed by natural laws and human reason. It's an idea that they actually got from Rousseau and Locke. The philosophers used to say that this doctrine of natural rights existed and that all men should basically respect these natural rights. And with that, when I write about it in a newspaper, in a book, and people who are educated read it, and they start thinking, I have natural rights, and then all of a sudden the king starts screwing them over, they're going to say, hey, wait a second, I have natural rights, and I'm educated, so I'm going to ask you for my natural rights. And then when the king says, no, you don't have natural rights, then they're going to get pissed. They're going to revolt. There's the American Revolution. Lexington and Concord, the shot heard around the world. But that's basically where we're going. Remember, in history, listen to me. You have to think 5 steps ahead or you'll be 3 steps behind. Okay? So, Great Awakening, Enlightenment, literacy, education, independence, Merca. That's right, Merca. All right, but before we get to Merca, let's talk about the French and Indian War. I don't do very much on it. It might be worth your time if you are really serious about that AP test to watch the French and Indian War John Green Crash Course. Extra credit opportunity. Watch it. It's about 12 minutes long. Take handwritten notes front and back on a piece of notebook paper. I'll give you 50 points. Now in 1763, we are going to have the end of the French and Indian War. I'm not even going to tell you really about the start of it. I'm just going to tell you. You know it's happening. You saw that map. There is a lot of land that the French have. We want that land, French and Indian War, done in 1763. Treaty of Paris ends it. France loses all of her Canadian possessions, most of her empire in India, and claims to anything east of the Mississippi. Spain gets some things, Mississippi River, New Orleans. New Orleans going to be important later. Lost Florida to England. So basically England gets a ton of stuff. You might want to circle down here England. Got all French lands in Canada, exclusive rights to Caribbean slave trade, and commercial dominance in India. So the French and Indian War really changes almost everything. Remember that very first map I showed you? I said that the French had everything. Well, now look who has everything. The British. Here's where you see the pendulum swing. Now, French, not really even in there anymore. The Spanish, yeah, they're there a little bit, okay? But North America in 1763, after the Treaty of what? Make sure you know it. The Treaty of Paris. This is what North America looks like. So make sure you understand that. Now, the effects on Britain, you'll notice this is down to the left-hand side. I want to pause it, get it down. 1, 2, 3. Pause it. It increases her colonial empire. You just might put more land. It also increases her debt, because does it cost money to fight a war? Oh, yeah. And the other thing is that a large part of Britain blames the colonies for this war because they couldn't control themselves moving westward, wanting more land. So England feels that basically the colonies somewhat cost them this war, so they think it's the colonies' job to pay this war. So they start putting what on colonies' goods? Taxes. They stop them from smuggling, and there's your American Revolution. Effect on of the war on American colonials. I've got 3 things for you here. Pause it, get it down. It united them against a common enemy. It socialized them with each other, again bonding them, making them stronger. And it creates bitter feelings towards the British, which basically sets the stage. Independence. They're mad about money. They're now getting stronger together. They're educated and asking why. So we've got a lot of problems, okay? The acts that are going to come from Britain, and I don't know if we really need to spend too much time. You might just write them down. Sugar Act, Currency Act, Quartering Act, Stamp Act. Y'all remember these? It's a lot of money coming out of the colonists' pockets. Remember, what's the easiest way to piss somebody off? Mess with their money. All of that. Colonies settled, unification against the Indians, the economy of the triangular trade making them strong, the Enlightenment making them educated, increased taxes, they don't like the British. It leads to, I think you might know that. And that's where we're going to start the next unit. American independence. All right, thanks for tuning in.